the Addiction 911 show, and today's topic is the great marijuana debate. Is it a medical miracle or a gateway drug? And this is a very hot topic, a highly debated topic, especially in the addiction community. And we have a special guest today, Keith McAdam. He's a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and he's originally from Long Island, New York. Keith dropped out of NYU in 1988 to embark on an extensive, unofficial, unfunded 13-year field study into the world of addiction and mental illness. In 2001, having passed his assumed expiration date and inspired by 14 years of volunteering with children and families living with HIV, he went on to receive his BS in psychology from the University of New Orleans and an MSW from UNC Chapel Hill. Keith is a strong advocate for harm reduction. He currently works as a licensed mental health and addictions therapist for people living with HIV/AIDS with the Duke Addictions Program and Wake County Human Services through the Ryan White funding and an SAM-HSA funded research grant. He lives in Durham, North Carolina with Tanya, his incredible wife of 16 years, and their two wonderful loving dogs, Peanut and Chester. Well, welcome so much, Keith. We're so happy to have you here on the show today. Thank you so much. You're doing incredible work in the addiction community, and we thank you for that because I know it's not easy, right? It's
not. It's interesting. It's never a dull moment, but it's important work.
It's important work. Absolutely.
Glad to give back after all the help I've received through my trials
and you've been in the trenches with this, and with your background as an addiction counselor, and as well as working with people, with HIV and AIDS, and a lot of them may be suffering. Let's just ask you, start off. What is your take? I mean, what do you feel about marijuana? Should it be legal, or should it be illegal? Do you think it's a gateway drug?
Yeah, I honestly, my real take on this is I think this is a discussion that we really shouldn't be having anymore. The research is out there. There are data as tall as I am, that have proven that there are all kinds of, effective uses medically for marijuana. And, the gateway theory, all it posits is one thing comes after another. It doesn't really prove any causality, and if we really extrapolate and go backwards, we can start with, caffeine, we can start with sugar, and, we breathe and then we move on to mother's milk. And there's, one thing is always going to lead to another. But, there's no, as far as the gateway hypothesis itself goes, there are no, there's no longitudinal thing that says anything, is causal. Just because it may be an association, there's no causality. There are a lot more factors.
I agree with that. I mean, what about nicotine? I mean, it kind of makes me laugh that, cigarettes are legal, yet cigarettes kill probably, I don't know what the statistics are, but when you look at it, how many people cancers cause, all the repercussions, that's something that's okay. We can all smoke. It's legal. Right. Yet marijuana doesn't do any of that, and yet it's illegal. And there's a lot of people, in the addiction community who are against it, And another thing that recently we did an interview on FLACA, which is here in South Florida. It's a huge problem. And one of the things that came up was that kids are taking or smoking marijuana, and they're being tricked. They're putting the FLACA in the joints, and then they're becoming addicted. And that probably happens with other drugs as well. If marijuana was legal and they can get it from a reliable source, we would probably cut down on the mixing of illegal substances, in there. And, but that being said, there are repercussions of people who abuse marijuana as well. Let's not fool ourselves. There's people who ruin their lives with marijuana. So, I think it's kind of like alcohol. It has to be used responsibly.
Yes, I agree. But, I think comparing it to alcohol, if you talk about like with cigarettes, the cost to society of tobacco use and of alcohol use in particular it's so far outweighs the negative effects of marijuana. I couldn't even go into the statistics. It's something like 60 or 70% of emergency room visits are in some way related to alcohol. Domestic violence, there are so many things that again, legal has nothing to do with dangerous. It just doesn't. The scheduling of drugs, how come cocaine and heroin, are Schedule 2 and marijuana is Schedule 1? It has nothing to do with any science. It just doesn't. And sure, is marijuana addictive? Sure. But when you look at all the research that's out there and all the crime statistics, the biggest consequence that people have is legal. That's just a fact.
That's a very good
and when you
point.
talk about...
That's a very good point. I love that you brought that up, because it's not about it being the crime because something is illegal that it makes the crime more. And yes, like you mentioned, domestic violence and some of the crimes that are committed and DUIs and accidents on the road, all of that. So much of that, as you said, is because of alcohol abuse.
Yeah, and opponents say, stone driving, people just take it lightly, and and all these things, and all this stuff has yet to be studied because we're not allowed to study it here still in the States. But we know what drunk driving does and causes, and what the cost to society and the cost to humanity is. So it's to throw out these little things and cherry pick these ideas that strike emotional chords, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So it's really easy to say, oh yeah, people impaired now on marijuana are, they're just going to be killing people on the roads, but there are no data to back that up.
Right.
It's fear, it's all fear tactics. It's why marijuana was made illegal in the first place. It's all political and fear and money. And, I firmly believe that now that, we're seeing what's going on with the medical community and we're seeing what's going on in states that have legalized retail use, money is going to change the tide. Money is just going to make things happen. And when we talk about it medically, there's the argument about using marijuana in itself as an organic product with medicinal properties. But I also believe that what's really going to turn the tide is all the research on the CBD and, the non-hallucinogenic effects. That's where the money's going to come in, and within the medical marijuana proponent community, there's a lot of talk about, we don't want big pharma involved and we don't want big tobacco involved. And while, that's in a perfect world, sure. But the bottom line is that's what it's going to take, number one. And number two, it's inevitable. We're a capitalist society. It's inevitable. Big tobacco is going to take over. Big pharma is going to take over. But in a way, we need partnerships, particularly in the medical end. We need that partnership because that's what's going to turn the emotional tide in this country. Is, the stories now about epilepsy and children basically going from, 100 plus seizures a day to zero. That's what's going to change people's minds. You can't put a child becoming well on TV and have people say this is a bad idea. So, the tide is going to turn. And it's funny, just a quick anecdote. I was at the Southern Harm Reduction Conference a couple of years ago, and one of the topics was dealing with, red state politics. And there was a Republican congressman who was here, and he had flown down from Michigan or somewhere, and he was with an older colleague of his, and he told him where he was going, and he said, "Why are you doing that? I didn't know you were a drug addict." And he laughed. And, so he told him why. And, coming at it from a conservative Republican standpoint for the fiscal idea, the fiscal point of it, and the older congressman said to him, "Look, you guys won that battle." He said, "The horse is already out of the barn. You just have to wait for guys like me to die off." So it's coming, it's all coming. These conversations are great, and we have to raise awareness. The positive end of it is that it's going to happen. It just is.
It should. I mean, you look at, how ridiculous it is. I'm sorry, that Oxycontin is given for pain relief and it's synthetic heroin. I mean, right. And that's okay, and if you look at all the toxic medicine, I mean, I get migraine headaches and I've been prescribed over the last couple of weeks. I won't take these medicines. I Google them and I'm shocked. Oh, may give you a heart attack. May do this. If you have chest pain, if your blood pressure gets uncontrolled, I'm not taking that. Meanwhile, you can take CBD oil, which I actually have started taking, made from hemp, so it's legal. And I've noticed that I feel like some more energy. I feel I haven't really seen too much with the migraines yet, but I notice it's just I've been feeling better overall, calmer and everything as well. I even bought my pets something called treatables, which is treats made with CBD oil. And supposedly there's really the testimonials of how it's helping animals. When my dogs are like 10 years old, and there are all these health benefits. And so it's just a shame that we're being denied this, but yet a doctor can prescribe us expensive, toxic medicine that can kill us. So to me, that's the problem I have. And I think it's, going back to the whole problem with the addiction community, and you were in the addiction community. Tell us a little bit about that pushback from actual addiction professionals, treatment centers who really don't want to see marijuana legalized.
Yes. Well, because so many addiction professionals do believe that it is a gateway drug.
Oh yeah.
I'm happy to hear. Yeah. That you believe that it should be legalized, that we should have the CBD oil, it should be legalized and all, because there are many in the addiction field who do not feel that way.
Yeah. And, when I got into this work, and I started this work late in life, as I said, and I joke in my bio about, doing all my field research early. When I got into the field, I graduated with my master's in 2007. And, the old school of treatment is abstinence only, 12-step. That's all that was available for years. Harm reduction wasn't even considered. The funny thing is that as early as the 1880s, there were papers being written about marijuana being used to mitigate the withdrawal symptoms of opiates. And, it was being used as a treatment for opiate addiction. But the old school, again, like the old school politics, the old school addiction community is so entrenched in the abstinence only school of thought that it's just so ingrained that people, they just don't want to come around. It's an addictive substance, so it's not good for you. And if you're not completely clean and sober, then you're not doing it right. And again, those attitudes are changing. But it's slow. Now that there are things like Smart Recovery and other harm reduction related treatments or, self-help groups, and that harm reduction, like in my program here at Duke, we work on a harm reduction principle, and the reason that we do it is because, number one, HIV and marijuana, that's some of the earliest work was done around nausea and, adherence to medication. And most of the doctors, that I've ever worked with, when we deal with addiction, they basically, doctors will say, look, if you smoke marijuana, it's going to be the least of your problems, as long as it doesn't take you back to the drugs that you're addicted to that are really dangerous and detrimental. If it's helping, it's helping. And so that's one of the reasons that our program is a harm reduction model, is because for our folks going to the rooms, the 12-step rooms, they were either told that they couldn't talk about their HIV because it was an outside issue. It's not related to your addiction. It's not, you're not talking about your addiction. You're talking about physical health. That's an outside issue. And that's a very old school 12-step idea. And the other thing was, even if they were, people weren't so hard about that, they weren't comfortable putting themselves out as, this is contributing to my mental health and my addiction. They couldn't do it. So the group that started here the idea was that for people with HIV, they needed to talk about their HIV in terms of their drug use and recovery. And, and again, the idea that I need to smoke the anti-nausea drugs don't work. Marijuana helps, and everyone's, people can say, oh, that's just an excuse. People say harm reduction, the model of harm reduction is an excuse to let people use drugs. And it's not. I mean, that's ignorance and fear. People don't understand that harm reduction is, allowing people to be a part of their own treatment, and allowing them to determine what works. And I've worked with a lot of people who have come to me and said, hey, look, I'm not really interested in quitting alcohol or, I use cocaine and my doctor says it's no good and I'd like to cut down. And we tell them, look, let's work on what you want to do. If you're smoking crack every day and you can get down to 5 days a week, that's a victory. That's better for your health. And I've had people who started out saying, with absolutely no intention or motivation towards complete abstinence, and yet they get there because they work their own program along with the mental health treatment, and they get to the place on their own that says, I feel better with nothing in my system. So
right.
If we allow people, to participate in their treatment rather than telling them you're doing it wrong or you're in denial because you want to use marijuana and you say it helps your pain or it helps your anxiety or it helps your nausea, that's an excuse, but it's not. And we have the data to prove it now.
Right. And it's true. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. I see there's a question here from Roxanne, and she says there is not THC for addiction in Charlotte's Web for epilepsy. And I recently did some research on marijuana in general and CBD oil when I ordered the CBD oil, because I was like, is this really legal? And the one that I ordered is legal. And I think the difference is that with having the THC is what makes, for people who don't know, is what makes you feel that head high. Now, it makes you feel, which a lot of obviously teenagers, they want it, marijuana very high in THC, and they don't really care as much about the CBD oil.
Right.
The CBD oils where you have that pain relief and that a lot of those benefits, more of those benefits, for pain relief body. And that's why the kids are not getting high who are taking Charlotte's Web. And what I read was interesting is the Charlotte's Web, which is interesting because it's really CBD oil, is only for kids approved, especially in the state of Florida. It's approved for the children, but not everyone else because it's made from the marijuana plant. But if CBD oil is made from the hemp plant, then it's legal, but not if it's grown here. It has to be grown somewhere else. So it's like the laws are insane on this whole thing with now Roxanne has epilepsy, and Roxanne, she has not tried it, but she knows people who have. Well, Roxanne, I would see if you could get, I don't know what state she's in, but if she could get that, I would try it. There's no drug interactions from what I've read with CBD oil. There's you don't have to worry. Like when I take a medicine the doctor gives me, I'm Googling, does this interact with this, and this? And it's just nothing but positive. So I don't understand why people,
And the research for North Carolina epilepsy is great. The effects, what they're showing, the results with epilepsy is one of the things that they're showing with CBD oil. Is really great results. And so for children to be able to have this, and not be able to take the horrible side effects of epilepsy medicine. Keith, one of the things that I do, I'm a holistic codependency coach and the editor of Addiction 911, but I'm also, I work with alternative medicine. I'm a master herbalist and I help people get off medication. So I have worked over the years with many people that are on pain medicine, and they want off. They weren't addicts in their life, but yet they've been in pain and prescribed this for pain from their doctor and having a hard time getting off. And I see firsthand the side effects of how debilitating their lives become. On pain, I had one client who had MS and was, on severe, and she was able to wean off and get on the CBD. I would love to be able to have that more access to that, even with my own clients for pain.
Right.
And so it is. Our country is really screwy when it comes to, for lack of a better word, when it comes to pharmaceuticals. That the money, the big pharma. When there is so much side effects, and this is something that's healthy for, the body and doesn't have the side effects. And yet when there is research done on marijuana today, only 6% of that research is still only on the medicinal properties of marijuana. And I don't understand why they are not doing more medicinal research. They were talking about this on the medical show on CNN the other day. that there's still only 6% research done on the medicinal. They're studying about the addiction of it and how it causes brain, how it affects the brain, and is it a gateway and all this. And I'm like, why don't you spend more money on, why do you think that is, that they still are not doing the medicinal research when it's such a topic that's out there so much today?
Right. Well, I mean, it's a matter of this whole Schedule I issue. There is research going on overseas. That's where 99% of all the data come from. And it's a matter of the scheduling here. And thankfully, there is a lot of good data. There are a lot of good data out there on the medicinal qualities. But it's still that old moral argument. It's still that old, it's illegal, so it's bad.
Is it really? And you wonder how much moral or how much financial, because it's a huge threat. You're talking about a plant that could be grown. It's a very hardy plant. Anybody theoretically can grow it in their home. Yeah. It's very difficult to make Oxycontin or, something, or drug, a pharmaceutical drug. Right. So you've got something that's a huge threat to the pharmaceutical companies, the billions of dollars that they make. So the FDA, it's interesting what they're doing now with the CBD oil, where people have websites. If you claim that, I have CBD oil, I'm selling it, and it's going to help your epilepsy or this, they'll send you a letter. I've read they've sent letters even to the dog. It's funny, even to the companies selling the dog treats. They have sent letters to them saying, you can't make those claims. It's not proven by the FDA. So, this is a way, and Debbie sees this because if they do this with all herbal remedies, they don't want anything. There's so many things that help so many conditions besides marijuana, right, Debbie? I take. And you know what?
There's some things the FDA has approved and regulated that I wouldn't touch. I don't care that. I said, what, people really knew about the FDA. Right. What the FDA approves and why, and some of the things they have approved that has not had enough research on.
Without a doubt.
Show on that, but
without a doubt. I just really quickly, I want to say goodbye to Roxanne and thank you for your.
Thank you, Roxanne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
And she was starting to speak about the vitamins and herbs and things like that for epilepsy, and to kind of get back, because this is one of the issues I deal with a lot is pain management here. And being an addictions therapist, I work with doctors on narcotics contracts, and the biggest problem that I've seen, and not just here, but, globally, at least in the U.S. and overseas in some places too, where, if you use marijuana, pain clinics will either not take you, or they will counsel you and continually test you. And if you don't test, if you don't stop using in a certain amount of time, then they will discharge you. So there's punishment for using marijuana for pain, and it's legal. It's a Schedule I drug, so doctors can get in trouble for overprescribing narcotics if someone is using illegal drugs. Regardless of all the data that are out and all the research that's there, it's still, it's a pejorative thing, so people are going to the streets, people are going to heroin, the heroin and opiate addiction, is becoming epidemic in this country.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you've got, the FDA and the the medical boards, with these punishments for doctors that you can't do this because marijuana is illegal, but yet you're prescribing these drugs that are becoming more and more and more prevalent and dangerous and overprescribed, so let's take something that, is so far been proven to be, pretty benign and very helpful, and tell people they can't get treatment because they're using something that they're not allowed to. So what do? They go to the streets. They go to the streets and they use whatever they can, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, other opiates. We're denying people treatment because they're using a natural substance that actually helps their pain, and that's one of the biggest things that I do here, and it's one of the biggest battles that I try and fight, so to speak, and thankfully, that's the greatest thing working here and working in the HIV community is that these doctors, they're very understanding. They get it. They get it. They don't condone it. They don't tell people to go out and smoke. But it's not used as a punishment. It's not used as something that says you can't get this if you do this. They used to say, and they still do, drug use and alcoholism, affect adherence to HIV medications. And to some extent that's true, but there are some data out there that have found that it's not true, and that in a lot of cases, people are actually more adherent. And I don't have that research, in front of me, which I should, but, it's out there and it's not as much of a hindrance, and it's especially not enough of a hindrance to deny someone treatment, be it for HIV, any other illness, and particularly for chronic pain. And folks that I deal with living with HIV, people have peripheral neuropathy that have, from the medications, from long-term, living long-term with HIV, and so again, for them to get appropriate medical treatment for their pain, they have to abstain from marijuana, and the marijuana is helping them. But again, it's seen as, hey, it's illegal. We can't do this. So there's no wiggle room yet.
That's what needs to change. I think, everybody being educated about this to understand that, and I think that's, like you said, the fear, people think, oh gosh, that's the gateway drug, and they're going to start with marijuana, then they're going to do heroin, and they're going to do this. But, even if it's legal, people start with alcohol. That's a gateway drug. People, take cold medicine, and it's a gateway drug. They smoke, it's a gateway drug. So it's by making it illegal, you're not stopping it from doing anything.
Yeah, no, you're not.
Right. As an addiction, if you're going to be addicted to something, you're going to take bath salts, you're going to take something, it's not going to just be one thing illegal. It's going to make a difference.
And the whole idea, the gateway theory, all it says is that in general, one thing happens after another. And in fairness, the gateway, the gateway literature does say that, addictive illicit substances like alcohol and tobacco are generally the first line. But then marijuana is singled out because then that's when it goes into the illegal, harder drugs. Right. But what the research says, there's a new paper that just came out in the American Journal of Drug and Alcohol Abuse. And it basically says that, just because one thing happens before another, it does not imply causality at all. And they found that the biggest, correlations are the reasons that people start using drugs or start using substances, period, alcohol, cigarettes, So why people start and other psychosocial factors are much better determinants of long-term issues with other drugs. And really it's one of the really basic things you can look at is the prevalence of marijuana use in society and the prevalence of cocaine use. If we have 50% of Americans that say they've tried marijuana and there are 9% of Americans who use cocaine, then your gateway theory falls apart.
Yes.
Because, if 50% of people use marijuana, then if you follow the gateway theory, then 75% of people should be using cocaine, and heroin. And it's, so it doesn't help, and all it does, again, is stigmatize marijuana. Because marijuana is the next step towards, total destruction. And it's just not true.
And it's true. I'm sorry, Debbie.
That believe that or say that, oh, yes, it's a gateway, as you said, are from, the old stigma, the old 12 step, and a lot of times when people don't have knowledge, haven't taken the responsibility to get more knowledge about it, when people don't know about something, they tend to fear it, and so they judge it. And so a lot of times I found that they just don't have the knowledge and haven't been educated on some of the research,
exactly.
The oil and some of the things to just really look and see at, the people that are so against it being legalized. Montel Williams is a great spokesperson for this.
Yes, without a
and
doubt.
has done so much research and educating and speaking about this. And he's a perfect example of the pain and how he was just, checked out of life on opiates, on pain medicine.
Yeah.
His MS, and how marijuana has saved him. And he said he's a functioning human being now, and he's not an addict, but he's a functioning human being. That's something that's helping his pain. And he said he's able to contribute to society again.
Exactly.
So there are people like that.
Sure. I mean, and just anecdotally, I have some friends that one of them he's had multiple back surgeries, and he was prescribed every narcotic on the books. And, we know that spinal injuries, they're very hard to treat. The pain is very hard to treat. Well, they had him jacked up on so many narcotics, and they weren't working. And so he was drinking a fifth of tequila a day.
Wow.
So he was totally non-functional. He was becoming dependent on narcotics. He was, really becoming addicted to alcohol. And his wife also has severe back problems, and she's had a neck injury. And she was a marijuana smoker to begin with. And she always said, I really wish that they wouldn't give him all these drugs and that he would just sit down with me, because he was not a smoker. And eventually, he got so strung out and was so sick from the narcotics and so unable to function that he said, I got to get off these things, so let me try. And then now they own their own business. They both do really well. They're functioning. They're members of their church. They're, productive members of society. Whereas before, neither of them could function because they were just so loaded with painkillers. And, between, just the side effects of the painkillers, the addiction of the painkillers, and the fact that, you can, when you're in that much pain and you just need more and more and more and more analgesic and, and with marijuana, sure, you build a tolerance, but it's not to the extent that you do with narcotics, and you can't just use more and more and more marijuana. I mean, you can't overdose on marijuana. It's no matter what your tolerance is, it has a certain effect and then it doesn't. And, but with narcotics, physiologically, dependence just happens. You can't avoid it. So we're creating, a society of addicts who are just trying to treat their pain.
Right.
And then there are, all these instances. And again, this, that's just anecdotal, that's friends, but I've seen it here at work as well. And I've seen it for years, just in the community and in the circles that I ran in, is that it helps so much more. It's got anti-inflammatory properties. It just does. And, one of the arguments is, well, it doesn't really help the pain. You just don't think about it because you're high. And my argument to that is, well, pain all happens in your brain. So if you're not feeling pain, what's the difference?
Yeah.
You're not feeling pain. The whole idea is you're trying to treat your pain. So you're not feeling pain. It's doing something to the pain receptors in your brain. So whether you're just not thinking about it, meditation is a great thing. There's now a lot of data on meditation for pain, particularly mindfulness meditation. That is the same thing. You're just not focusing on the pain, so what is the difference? Why is that okay?
Right.
I'm grateful that there's research on that and that, the data are coming out that, really prove the power of meditation on our physical health. But it's the same idea. You're just not thinking about the pain.
You bring up a really good point. I wanted to point out something that you said about, with calling it a gateway drug, and how the studies don't prove that. And it makes a lot of sense. If we're going to say, and most people agree, addiction is a disease, right? They're saying maybe it is a gene or there's something that's causing it. So that would make no sense that marijuana would be a gateway drug if that's true. The other thing you said about how we're creating a society of a different sort of addict that is trying to remedy pain. These are not your same addicts who have, or are the typical addict who are going to become an addict no matter what. These are addicts being created because they're in tremendous pain. And when you're in pain, you will do anything to get out of pain. Trust me. I know when I get a migraine headache, you're like, I would stand on my head if it would work. Any suggestion I will try to use because it's horrible. And, I had a similar situation with my ex-husband, 4 herniated discs. He was very close to death after being prescribed, he was on Oxycontin, he was on Xanax, and he had 2 drinks, and he was actually almost dead in a coma. And honestly, now he can't take any of that. So he does use marijuana and it helps. So it's another example of somebody who's, who's using that. So this is such a, I don't understand the logic in it, why I think people, like you said, really have to understand this, that they're, we're creating people who then go from the pain pills and then they go to the heroin. Right. Like there's housewives, there's mothers who are originally got in a car accident. They can't control it. They're in pain. They get the Oxycontin. They get cut off from Oxycontin because now the doctors say, "Oh, we don't want you to be an addict."
Right.
You go on the street for $10. Now they're heroin addicts.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something else that possibly could help them. And then you said about the the high of the head, but the CBD oil, which does reduce pain too, doesn't give you that. So that throws that argument out.
Exactly. And that's, again, I think that's like you're saying, it's the education. People lump everything together and they don't realize that, they are 2 different animals. And that, yes, there are things that the THC, is helpful with, to mitigate certain things. Primarily, there's the CBD oil. And if people understood that more, I think that it would, then you still have the idea of, well, you're just getting high if you're not just taking CBD oil. But, that's something that is just, it's a culture change that has to happen and is only going to happen with more education.
Right. When you talk about people with cancer that are doing chemotherapy and the nausea and how marijuana is helping, so much with that. Oh, yeah. I think that we should be able in America to be able to have a choice. We have a friend who's been doing the CBD oil, and her tumor markers have just dropped tremendously with this CBD oil. And so, choosing to do alternative things rather than the chemo therapy and the radiation, of course, those things are, which is a whole nother topic, those things are a threat to big pharma. And money that is in cancer is huge. And
chemotherapy, right, Debbie? That's very
tremendous. So, there's, a lot of it is political and money and.
Sure. But again, the data are there. There's a paper that came out in 2012 that proved that CBD is beneficial as your endocannabinoid levels rise. There's a decrease in cancer cell proliferation in lung cancer. And it's just, straight up data, it's there. It protects your liver against hypoxia. That was European Journal of Pharmacology, 2011. It's protective in brain injuries and improves locomotor function, in recovery from spinal cord injuries, and actually reduces, it's beneficial in the treatment of spinal cord lesions. And, these are published papers. This is real data. That prove that, there are all these uses, that all these effective uses of CBD oil, if not marijuana in itself.
That's amazing. Is there anybody who's on right now who disagrees with, I guess Debbie, Keith, and I are really, in agreement on this end, but is there anyone who wants to jump into the seat and, tell us how you feel? If you feel, that a different opinion, you're welcome to join in. We would love to debate, right? We'd love to talk about this more. And I think if you agree with what, and you do more research on this, I think, getting more involved and going out and voting is going to be the only way. Like Colorado voted, and, you got to get out there and vote. If you want to see this legal, then at least for medicinal. I mean, Florida, unfortunately, we had it for medicinal. We had we needed 60% of the vote, and we had 58 or whatever in a couple years ago. And it was.
I think when it goes on the ballot next time, Christina, when the election comes, I really feel that it will pass this time. I mean, that's the consensus because we were 58%, 59%. We're going 1% behind. So I think that it's all about timing, and more education's coming out there.
But there's also politicians putting out, like I know with that last campaign, there was politicians, with a lot of money behind them. There were some special interest groups who put commercials and stuff, like scaring the people against legalizing it to get their vote. They put millions and millions of dollars of commercials. And so you wonder what their agenda is. Do they have, stocks in a pharmaceutical? They have some special interest and they don't want to see. So you were dealing with this big force of money, in a certain segment of that they do not want to see this happen. So it's up to the people.
Right. Exactly.
And say,
with as far as the politicians go, they are still, their motivation is that old voter bloc who just will not budge, on the moral argument. So they know that the more they throw that scare tactic out, that the more it's going to bring people, to make sure they vote, because people, oh God, I wasn't really going to vote because I'm sick of politicians, but yeah, we really got to keep marijuana away from our kids. Right. I mean, it's, it's a draw. It's, and God knows I don't want to go into politics. That's a whole nother, debate or conversation, but, there's so much hypocrisy out there where, people say one thing and they don't even believe it themselves. They just put it out there because they know it's going to garner votes. It's just, there are common sense things that intelligent people say that, are just contradictory. And it's just to scare people, rile people up and get votes. These guys want to stay in office. That's what they're, 90% of them, that's what they're there to do, is stay in office, and, facts don't matter.
And that's a terrible shame. And probably a lot of these people, you say older people who are against it, were the same people now in their 70s who were stoners in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does.
They were doing a lot of pot back then, probably, and a lot worse, right?
And
most of the baby boomers usually, though, are the ones that are for it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
I find the ones that did smoke it back in the day, like myself, back in the 70s, early 70s, are for it. I mean, we want to see it legalized. We want to see it help. Of course, my field, I want to see it for medical reasons. I've seen tremendous things with it for medically. I think it's ridiculous that it's not legalized anyway, but there's a lot of big other, as we've talked, there's a lot of big other forces behind why it's not. Don't you think, Keith, eventually, I don't know when, but eventually it will be in almost all states?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, look at how fast things have moved, I mean, 5 years ago, there were 3 or 4 states. I mean, we're at 28 now in DC, I think. And it's, so things have really snowballed. And, as the little story from earlier, the horse is out of the barn. It's going to happen, and again, when the money starts turning over, I mean, they're starting to see the effects that, how much tax in, the tax revenue in Colorado, no one is going to be able to deny that. No one is going to be able to deny that. When we're building schools, when we're building roads, we're fixing our infrastructure, and we're also providing money for treatment. That's, the tide is going to turn. Money talks, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that already exists. It's all underground. So if we bring it above ground, then we're going to create jobs. We're going to create tax revenue. Talk about employment, just jump on LinkedIn or Twitter and see the people who their job is cannabis marketing. It's, there is an entire industry now around legal cannabis, whether, medical as well as retail. It's a huge industry. The industry exists. The money is being spent. And that's why even the most conservative of Republicans, the fiscal part of this whole argument is going to take over, because you can't deny millions of dollars of tax increase, of tax income. You can't deny it, and again, you're already seeing, and there are studies out there that say that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, that the teen usage and adolescent usage does not go up. It's people say, oh yeah, once we get it out there, then everybody's going to have it. People are going to give it to their kids. The kids are good. The kids are going to get it one way or the other. They already do. It's not going to make it any different. And for, one study I read talked about, the behavioral predisposition. And when you have kids with antisocial personalities, antisocial personality disorder, they're more likely to do it because it's illegal.
Yes.
And so, it's, you take away that aspect of it. And, there are going to be a segment of the population that are not as interested in doing it. And sure, that's a small, that's just a small percentage. And it's, but it's just, again, it's something that's overlooked. It's something that's not
safety too. I mean, we look at, like we said before, with the flakka and the other drugs that are being put in by drug dealers on purpose, sold to kids that will instantly addict them. That's being mixed into joints. That's just very, very scary. I'd rather have, my son or daughter go out and buy it legally if it's legal. Right. Get something off the street, because you don't know what the heck is in there, and it's something that could potentially kill you. The other, to play a devil's advocate here, there are, obviously, if it's legal, and I'm sure it's having there's going to be people abusing this. There's going to be people, it's going to lower their motivation. I'm sure we all know people who are crispy critters, who've done marijuana. I have a family member who's a crispy critter. But he's like now, but he's a lot over the years. And, these people. So really anything you do, let's not be mistaken, including marijuana. We're not saying it's, if you abuse it, you're going to you're going to be non-productive. You're going to be, you're not going to have much ambition. You're not going to reach where you want to in life. So that's going to come with anything. But I think the benefits outweigh the people. Exactly. Anything's going to be abused. Like we said, you can go abuse cough medicine. You can abuse sugar. Somebody brought up earlier here about sugar.
Yeah, sugar's terrible. Sugar's killing people.
Exactly. So, to make it illegal just for that it's not fair to all the benefits that it'll give.
Right. Exactly. It's common sense. Again, if you know the data, it's common sense. It's common sense. There's just, the benefits, the cost benefit analysis is just, it's simple math, and it's just, things are changing. Things aren't changing fast enough, but the more people learn, it's going to turn the tide. And anything can be abused. Shopping is addictive. Sex is addictive. Food is addictive. We don't tell people not to eat or have sex. We don't make shopping illegal. It's, anything in excess is bad for you. That's, no matter what it is, God, you can die from water overdose, for gosh sakes. It's, so again, with all the data that are out there that are telling us all these benefits and debunking all of the old myths, it's gotta, the science just has to get out there. It's got to be out there, put out there in a way that's palatable and understandable, and that's, the whole Sanjay Gupta coming out and saying I was wrong. That was huge. That was a huge, huge turning point in a lot of ways, because here's a guy who's a pop culture. He's a legitimate doctor, obviously, but he's a pop culture personality. And for him to come out and say, my stance all these years was wrong because now I've read the data. Now I know the research. I was wrong. This is not a killer drug that's ruining society. This is a beneficial thing that we have to understand more and regulate and, give to people who are in need. That was a big deal. It was a really big deal for him. Again, any pop culture person that, that comes out and who is a doctor, for him to come out, it just, that's the kind of stuff, again, when you get to the old entrenched ideas, you've got people who are, older, sitting at home, watching the news, they trust him. He's a nice, good looking guy. He says all the right things. So, that information is going to get out there when we have people like him really coming out and supporting this and backing it up as a doctor who people know and trust just because of the fact that he's on TV. God knows people, he could not even be a real surgeon and nobody would know, exactly. But, obviously he is. And, he's a very brilliant guy. So for him to just, again, come out and say, I was wrong, and that's just a huge thing. That's a huge thing. And I think it's really helped turn the social tide a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a great conversation, Keith. We're almost to an hour now. But I wanted to ask you, just in closing, what do you suggest people do? I would say, obviously educate yourself, go online, research. Any other suggestions if people want to learn more about this?
There are plenty of great things. NORML, the National Organization for Marijuana Reform Laws, they're a great resource. Drug policy, the Center for Drug Policy is a great resource. There's plenty out there. Social media is now full of information and lobbying groups and, meetups. And, people are really stepping up to the plate. So there's a ton of resources out there to advocate and lobby and, petition. But the bottom line is education. Educate yourself first. And when you understand and know, educate the people around you. Exactly. Let people know that this is a serious thing. This is not just a bunch of people wanting to get high.
Exactly.
Because that's the moral thing that it goes back to. People just want to get high. And, the bottom line with that is, we have cannabinoid receptors in our brains. People have been getting high as long as, and before written history. That's just, it's genetic. And there's even, I read in one of the papers I was reading that, from an evolutionary standpoint, mind-altering substances like cannabis are actually a functional part of evolution because they promote sex. They promote risky behaviors, but procreation as a risky behavior, is an evolutionary tool. So it's, we are built with the physiology and the chemistry that is, we are designed to want to achieve higher levels. And, let's face it, it's, there is enjoyment in it. People wouldn't smoke if it wasn't enjoyable, relaxing, adding to humor, reducing inhibitions. Those are not bad things. And it's built into us as a species. Right. There's a doctor out there. His name is Doc Wilmot, and gosh, I should have wrote the name of his book down. But basically, I'll post it on my LinkedIn and on my Twitter account. But he's an MD, and he's written a book that basically says, look, we're supposed to do this. We have to change the way we look at addiction and drug use. Because there are people who function. There are people who do well. I met a woman at Southern Harm Reduction Conference she's an active heroin user, and she runs a nonprofit. Her son goes to Johns Hopkins. She pays her bills. She doesn't, she's not getting arrested. She's a perfectly functional member of society who's actually doing well and promoting health and promoting harm reduction and syringe exchange and all that. And she's an active heroin user, and she admits it. And she says, look, who's going to tell me that this is wrong? I live a perfectly healthy life.
On heroin? I enjoy, that's hard to believe.
It may be hard to believe, but
I can't imagine anybody being able to function like that.
It is, because it's a matter of knowing yourself. And I'm not saying that everyone can regulate heroin use. I'm not advocating that heroin should be just as legal and whatever, but it's the idea that we look at things the wrong way. We look at things through one lens, and we don't realize that, it's like with alcoholism, people say, well, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, and you can never pick up a drink again. And it's just not true. Right. It's just, for some people it is. For many people it isn't. I was a severe alcoholic in my 20s. I drink socially now. It's people don't believe it. People don't
and
believe
it. What? That's a great, that would be a great show, because
that would be, because that's a tough one.
Because I too believe that. I think a lot of people, who think they're alcoholics in many years past, had a lot of emotional and baggage stuff. They just that's how they were dealing was abusing alcohol, and yet weren't really alcoholics, and then believing the rest of their life for years that they can never touch, So that would be a great show to do, Christine, for us.
I mean, on the other hand of it, though, I have to say from personal experience with cigarettes, I haven't had a cigarette in about 19 years now, and I know if I ever had a cigarette again, I would be addicted to cigarettes. I know that. I mean, I was the first thing I thought of in the morning. So that's a tough. It would be a great show because that is a really tough. I mean, to me, the answer is no, and I will never have a cigarette because I know I'll be addicted. It's just I have that personality.
And yet, I know people that have smoked for years, and they only smoke when they're having a cocktail on the weekend or something.
Yeah,
I could never do that. I would become I would be a pack a day again. I mean, it's been 19 years.
I'm one of those people, I'm one of those people.
There's different people. A lot of people like that. And then there's people who can't.
And there's people who can't. Exactly. And that is a great topic. And I can get transcripts of LinkedIn posts and, threads that I've been on where there is a big
we might have to have you back, Keith, and we'll have that.
We'll have you back when we do that. I love that. Great idea. And I want to thank you so much for being here today, and thank everybody who watched. And, if you want to get a free copy of Addiction 911 magazine, just go to www.addiction911magazine.com. We're working on our next winter issue that will be out soon. We go, it's 4 times a year. It's absolutely free. And we're on the iPhone, the iPad, Google Play, Android, and Amazon, all free. And so we have, great interviews like this. And we have also our blog at addiction911blog.com when we're going to be posting this interview. If you want to watch the replay, if you caught the tail end, come back here and watch the replay. Thank you so much, Keith. This was wonderful. We want to have you back again. You're a wealth of resources.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. This was great. And anytime, I'd love to come back.
Yes, we're going to do it again. Thank you, Keith. Bye.
And hey,
have a good weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
A really quick plug. I write for rehabs.com. I write not a blog, but I'm one of the contributing authors for that. So go check out the articles there. There's a lot of great people. Stanton Peel, Omar Manajwala. rehabs.com, Pro Talk.
Go check out rehabs, plural or rehab?
Plural. Yeah, rehabs.com.
Right here. Let me put it in the notes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I'm going to type this in, rehabs.com. There we go.
There's a Pro Talk section. Yeah, so Stanton Peel, Omar Manajwala, there's some great people that write for that site. Ken from HAMS, Harm Reduction. There's a lot of great people. So, yeah.
Great. I'm going to go check it out. Sounds great.
And
Keith, I'd love to have an article from you as well. Send me an article on this topic. So in the spring issue, we'll have this and we'll have the article.
Great. Sure. I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, send any articles you want in the magazine. You're great. We'd love to have you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. It was great speaking with you guys.
Nice.
All right, take care. Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Keith. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care.